Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here. And as many people were focusing on the Charlie Kirk assassination on September the 10th, there was another big story in the news happening that most people just did not notice because they were caught up in the other news of the day, which is that there were actual fights happening in the skies over Poland between the Polish government and Russia. Now, this is extraordinarily dangerous, obviously a part of the manufactured agenda that's being laid out before us right now. But Poland scrambles jets as Russia launches massive aerial assault on Ukraine. This is happening as Trump says it's not the right time for a Russia-Ukraine ceasefire. Wait, I thought it was going to be within the first 24 hours of his administration that it was going to be finished. And oh, I thought he was well on the way to making that deal with Putin the other day, or I mean, I shouldn't say the other day, last month. And of course, all these other back and forth, dialogues being given to the media about how it's all over and don't worry about it, it's all good. This was manufactured long ago. Regardless of the president in power, we are going to see the same things play out as a U.S. approved $780 million sale of javelin missiles to Poland as Russia threat grows. Now, that's on top of the fact that the U.S. is delivering drone strike kits to Ukraine. And we're seeing calls for actual war from NATO leaders across the board. So we are going to dig into this and more today, my friends. Before we do, I urge you to check those links below and get prepared today. Go and check out heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off as well as free shipping on these items. I highly recommend people get on this today. In the face of all this, the ultimate the ultimate move here, the modus operandi of all these wars is to eventually put us in a place where we are in a technocratic digital ID gulag system where we are dependent on food rations. So get stocked up so you are not left behind. Also, make sure to help us and support us if you can over at gogetfunding.com, Patreon, or Subscribestar. We have a Bitcoin address as well, which you could scan on the screen here or check out in the description, as well as a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins. We're on Rumble and BitChute at World Alternative Media. And of course, we have our Teespring store for merchandise below. Now, let's get into this. So, a lot of people kind of miss this story. And I think it's incredibly dangerous and incredibly important. Now, it's a part of the normalization of warfare that we've been witnessing for so long as Poland scrambles jets as Russia launches massive aerial assault on Ukraine. Polish and allied military aircraft were scrambled early Saturday after Russia launched a massive aerial assault on Ukraine, including strikes that targeted near its western border with Poland. It came hours after NATO intercepted 3 Russian jets over Estonia's airspace with Europe on heightened alert following a series of Russian airspace violations in eastern countries. I want to make it absolutely clear that Putin has already said, why would we go to war with Poland? It makes no sense. It would put the whole world in danger. We don't want anything to do with that. And generally, I believe him, even though he is a puppet of the New World Order like everyone else. But I think it goes without saying, why would you want to shoot yourself in the foot? It would cause the full, breadth of the war to weigh down on your shoulders from all of Europe and, of course, the U.S. and elsewhere. And, of course, then that would be World War III, which I actually think we're already in, technically speaking, if we consider all the countries at war right now. Technically, China, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, then there's Iran, the top allies of Russia and China, and Israel, Palestine, Gaza, obviously Yemen and Lebanon and Syria, and the overtaking of Syria, the attempt to continue taking over Iraq and Afghanistan, Pakistan and India, of course, is another one, the U.S., and of course, what we've been seeing with Mexico, Thailand, and Cambodia. I mean, it's just across the board. We are witnessing war. And oh, I can't forget Venezuela and now Puerto Rico. Oh my goodness. So this is, I mean, essentially a world war, and we're being distracted from it while being normalized to it while being conditioned to it, obviously. And it's very dangerous. What we're seeing here, I see the attempt at false flags across the board. I've been saying this all along, of course, and we've seen what the German government in January 2024 said. They said they expect to be at war via NATO with Russia by July 2025. Now, of course, we're in September 2025 now. But that does not change the overall agenda, even if it's pushed off a little bit. Of course, they already wrote in their blueprints what they expect to see, what they expect to do, they expect to happen. going forward as we see a manufactured shift from the west to the east, which we've done videos on recently, which you can check out on how, you know, we've seen that power shift happen. It's all by design. The U.S. is heavily involved in committing suicide here and pushing into the Eastern Bloc, but under the guise of, oh, well, our society's in collapse, so therefore we're forced to shift into this new system. It's all one big lie. But anyway, the point is, I believe that what we're seeing right now is just a manufactured shift into that Eastern Bloc, and of course the bringing in of technocratic powers through emergency orders. So again, that's something that we've seen shifting dramatically lately. Of course, we have seen the attempted talks between Trump and Putin and Zelensky, while France is doubling down and saying they want to put boots on the ground. We saw the German chancellor recently say that he wants, that it is essentially war with Russia, that they are at war currently with Russia. And I believe, just like with the Middle East and the 7-country plan, we are witnessing something that will happen one way or another. And, you know, Trump ran on being against arming and funding Ukraine and saying that he was going to end the war on like day one, which obviously was not going to happen. And of course, presidents don't have the power to really change that. They can, you know, take a bite out of it essentially and get people to you know, side with them on these issues, you know, obviously culturally and, you know, politically. But when it comes to actually ending the war, this was scripted long ago. BBC says, what's with Russia violating Polish airspace? Trump reacts to Moscow drone incursion on NATO ally. Here we go. U.S. President Donald Trump reacts to Russia's drone incursions over Poland, saying Moscow violated its airspace. Remember, Trump had also threatened to send long-range missiles and attack Moscow in 2024, caught on audio. Same thing with attacking Beijing, as he said, again, in 2024, before he was once again the president. And he asked Ukraine recently this year how much it would take to for them to attack Moscow with long-range missiles. And Zelensky responded, we'll send them over. And then he said, oh, we're against Ukraine. Like this whole veneer when they meet in office, it's the same thing as like Trump running on being against or wanting to expose Epstein and then being like, there's nothing to see. And anyone that questions is a weakling. And it's child trafficking. Anyone that questions it and wants justice is a weakling, as he says. Obvious blackmail. It's the same thing. They totally switch over when they're in office, and it's his last term. So, I mean, why he's a president. Why wouldn't he? He's a puppet. They all are. I'm sorry if I'm bursting your bubble, but he, of course, earlier this year went on the attack with Zelensky in what was kind of a comedic event in the White House in the Oval Office, which I honestly enjoyed because I really don't like Zelensky. And I think he's a corrupt, horrible puppet. And of course, a part of the product of the Maidan Massacre false flag in 2014, which led to him being propped up in the first place, obviously later on, despite being a comedian that played the piano with his penis on television. So yeah, that's who we're dealing with in World War III, because this is all one big joke on us, one big stage show. It's all, the whole world's a stage. But Trump is going after Zelensky in the Oval Office. It leads to this big controversy. Excuse me. And then we see them say, oh, we're going to work with them and send them missiles. And on the same day that he says that, Netanyahu nominates Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize as he's attacking Iran, one of the top Russia and Chinese allies. And of course, leading into that, or leading out of that, he then says we are going to have conversations with Putin in person, and then he meets in Alaska, and it all looks chummy because, of course, these guys are all puppets, and there's no reality to any of this. And then Trump says he's very disappointed in Putin and doesn't and thinks that he screwed him over. And then he continues sending javelin missiles to Ukraine. Do people not see the evident scripted event happening before their eyes? So we have Trump saying it's not the right time for a Russia-Ukraine ceasefire now. Funny how that turned around like overnight. We're just going in circles and circles for eternity, my friends. It just never ends. And, you know, as we hear this news of these ceasefires basically being on hold, we're seeing the sale of these $780 million in javelin missiles sent to Poland. Again, just once again, normalizing the threat. The U.S. is, of course, approving this. Of course, this is in response to the Russian drone incursions, and NATO is extending this Eastern century. Italy is backing out, by the way. Interesting on that end. Some European countries don't feel like it's a good idea to essentially commit suicide, but there will be different blocks within Europe that will be part of that Eastern bloc later on. The U.S. is delivering drone strike kits to Ukraine now. And this is all as NATO nations defend minister calls for shooting down Russian warplanes. Members of the bloc should target Russian military aircraft as Turkey did in 2015, Lithuanian MOD chief Dovile Sakhalin has said. Now, this is happening as Russian MiG-31s are busting Estonian airspace, which has Eastern Europe on edge. Italy, Sweden, and Finland scrambled fighters after the Foxhounds flew into Estonian airspace for about 12 minutes. And I should also add that we have recently heard that the Air Force, the British Air Force, and of course the French Air Force are scrambling right now over potential Russian drones as well. This is only going to push into a territory that is bad for everyone. But of course, they will play it as politics, left, right, Russia, Ukraine, both propped up by the US in the first place, by the West in the first place, such as China as well, just as Iran was, just as Israel was, just as, most of these countries that are fighting altogether, Taiwan, India. I mean, all these countries are very much manipulated and propped up by the West in order to eventually fight each other in this end time scenario where they shift from the West to the Eastern Bloc, which that Eastern Bloc will be, of course, technocracy, digital IDs, as I've said. And I'm just so sick of people playing the games of, oh, well, Russia's worse or Ukraine's worse. It isn't real. None of it's real. It's all part of the same agenda, the same exact move to essentially force humanity into chains on their knees to the anti-human technocracy. And with emergency orders in place already, again, the United Nations Pact for the Future, which was signed by 193 countries in September of 2024, has already been put in place where they could shut down your bank, force you into food rations, etc. They're bringing in the draft everywhere. All of this manufactured to force you into a place where you will have no way out. You'll be glassed off in a dome like in Logan's Run, eating Soylent Green because you didn't plan ahead. Something that I urge people to do, obviously, is actually plan ahead, because that is how you starve out that system. This system that should, of course, concern you, but not make you live in fear. No one is going to save the day here for you. This is all part of one big agenda, and they want to keep you sitting on your hands. Maybe the next election will fix this. As they push culture wars in the United States right now as well with what they're doing with Charlie Kirk, and I urge people to see my video on the Charlie Kirk Trojan horse. Also see my video on Israel shutting down the internet and how that is playing into the normalization factor that we're witnessing here. So again, I want people to take this seriously, withdraw from the system, starve out the system, cut off the head, and the body will die, as they say. Metaphor, of course. A way to peacefully dissolve the system, because they depend on the dependence of the masses. I urge people, once again, to go and check those links in the description. Again, heavensharvest.com, code WAM, W-A-M. For those survival food kits, of course, that's non-mRNA, non-GMO. Of course, organic kits are available. That's something that you can't find almost anywhere else in this quality. This isn't the kind of crap that they sell at Home Depot. heavensharvest.com, code WAM, W-A-M, and be self-sustainable, my friends. And as I mentioned before, there's ways to withdraw from the digital ID CBDC system within the banking system, because people are so dependent on banks, which is extremely dangerous going forward. And one of the ways they're going to utilize this to force us into the technocracy under the guise of these emergency orders. So, for example, you have firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/ has to be that exact link. It's in the description. Buy physical gold and silver, put it in your hands, put it in a vault, put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system. We have options, my friends. Work with Mark Gonzalez, a good friend of ours over there. Let him know that you found him at Wham. We have ways to avoid the system that we're dealing with right now, as far as Wi-Fi and cell phone towers and these kinds of things, bad frequencies. We are under attack all the time, my friends. We have links for WaveWatch 2.0, where you could use code WAM, W-A-M, and you will get $100 off 1,100 plus frequencies, all to improve sleep and reduce stress. Something that I need to get on right away, actually, because I had to pause this video in the middle because I felt like I was going to pass out. High blood pressure, lots of problems lately. And that's another thing I want to mention. You know, circulation is a big one, very important going forward. We have vni.life/wham, W-A-M, for super supplements, one of them being something that I'm really excited about, of course, Protovite. 100 plus vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients. You could use code WAM15, WAM15, and save 15% off on this. And also you could subscribe and save 20%. This is super cool. Helps with, the problems of circulation. This is a before video. And this is 5 minutes after. Red blood cells freely flowing, circulation restored, white blood cells 4 times bigger. Super cool. So health is a good way to start out the system as well, obviously. We have a million options in the description. And, I hate to cut this video short, but I have to. Sometimes I'll be in the middle of something and just go, I'm getting too angry about these issues and I need to calm down, because we are dealing with an absolutely dark, miserable reality right now, which we can find our way out of. We just need to know the truth first in order to understand how to free ourselves from it. And it can get overwhelming sometimes, but alas, there are solutions out there, and it's all about being self-sustainable. I'm not making money off almost any of these things. The idea is to have something that people can look at as a way to withdraw from the system that we are being indoctrinated into, normalized to. And again, if any of the things that have been happening in the last few years happened 10 years ago all at once, people would be losing their mind. But we've been normalized to it, even those of us that are awake. And I think it's more important than ever that we withdraw from that system before it encapsulates us completely. And if you want to help support us, we truly appreciate it. So we do have gogetfunding.com. We have Patreon and Subscribestar. Pledge $4.99 a month or more, and you'll get exclusive content on there, including personalized video messages from me and early access to videos. We have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. Again, all that's in the description. We really need your help right now. We have a Bitcoin address that you could scan on the screen here or check out in the description of this video, if you please. We have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in, including privacy coins. And of course, we have our Teespring store with a bunch of merchandise. Of course, you could find us on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. And on the bad guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where of course we're banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, stay tuned. We have a lot more coming to you. We're just stranded in Canada right now, dealing with a lot of nonsense, but nonetheless, we are trying to keep track of everything that's happening and bring you the truth, unfettered. Now, as always, as I close it off saying every single time, live freely, live by example always. Until next time, my friends, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.